And welcome back to Sports Check on this Monday morning on the 4th of July 2022. If you're an American citizen, happy Independence Day to you. But now, for the rest of us who are here in Kenya, it's time for us to basically take a look at what to expect in our news coverage today. We definitely know that the Agano Party, they will be launching their manifesto today, and that is going to be done by More Waihiga, who is the presidential candidate for the Agano Party. And already we have had one other event that has taken place, and this is the launch of the National Special and Land Use Tools. So that has been done by the Cabinet Secretary for Defense, Eugene Wamalwa. And taking a look at where the campaigns are, Right Honorable Raila Odinga is on the campaign trail in Nairobi. His running mate, Martha Karua, is going to be in Narok. And we also have got a court team that are out there. We've got elections, and Edward Mondi will be taking a look at that. And Safina Ching is going to be unpacking the manifesto. And an event, just to alert you about, that we shall be taking a look at is that His Excellency, the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, is going to be at the Kenyatta International Convention Center. And this is for the inauguration of the Nairobi International Financial Center Authority. That event is supposed to start shortly, and as the conversation goes, we shall be joining our team that is at the KICC as the President inaugurates the Nairobi International Financial Center Authority. So amongst those who are going to be there, there is a Regional Commissioner, Kangede Duku, and also the Chairman of the Board, Mr. Vincent Ragwe, who is going to be making their remarks. That is our news outlook. So we move on to our second conversation today. And again, we're talking about speed today. Think of a car that's been given a very heavy boost. Think of super bikes. The quite fast and loud, and how they do this. Well, there's going to be a second event of the year, the Sunset Corsa, and this is organized by Motorsport Kenya Daimler, and we've got Byron Omondi with us. Byron, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me here today.
Yes, and Byron, before I get back to you, bottom right of your screen is our sign language interpreter, and Wangeshi. So Byron, the whole concept of having drag racing in Kenya, what were the origins? Because we already know we've got, time trial is known, but what about this format?
I think it's something that has been long coming, because when you look back to the past, the way people used to do things back in the old days was actually different, because I think from a time when I was young, the whole idea about racing, when it came to my head, was about the safari rally and that kind of thing. But when we actually started moving forward, you get new kinds of cars that are coming into the market. You get cars that are not built for that kind of off-road racing. So this was something that was actually in the make, and it's actually here with us. It's actually happening. And the Sunset Corsa is one of the platforms where such things are going to be happening this weekend.
Well, we all know about the rally cars, and Kenya has a history. Actually, there were racing tracks. When you hear Agari La Langalanga, actually there's a place in Nakuru known as Langalanga because of the racing track that was there, and one in Nairobi that is now the internal container depot. But for these cars that you use for drag racing, what is the specification and the work that goes into putting it out there?
I think to consider getting your car into such an event, you have to obviously invest a lot of money into the car. It goes in different aspects, because you need to have upgrades on your engine, you need to have upgrades on your gearbox, and it goes to the tiniest bits of it, actually all the way up to the wheels that you're using for racing. Because if you buy a car, let's say like a Volkswagen GTI from let's say 2014, you're going to get about 220 horsepower. That is just about enough power to put you on a road and to actually give you a good sense of performance. But if you're going to go into such events and you intend on coming out victorious, you need to do a lot of tunings, which start from the basics, like the software that your engine is running. That is actually the stage 1 tune, and then you go all the way up to even the way that Your gearbox, because if you're having around 350 or 400 horsepower, you need your gearbox to be able to actually match the eagerness of the engine that you're running. So there is actually a lot of work that goes on into such vehicles, and garages have actually come up over the years, and they're actually doing this for most of the drivers who will be participating in events like these ones.
And when you take a look, the work that you do when you talk about the software that runs the engine, the ECU, what is it that you change such that when you take a look at what's under the bonnet, then you have got improved performance? What are the changes made?
Actually, I think the guys at the garages are actually the experts on that one. But from what I've seen them do, a guy comes with a laptop, connects it to your ECU, types a few things, and after that, now he tells you now you're at 250 horsepower from your 210 or your 220, and that is actually what happens with the first stage of tuning. You don't have to change like a lot of things going into it.
So you don't need to boost, you don't need to supercharge or have turbo at that point?
Actually, most of the cars that go into that kind of stuff actually go in there with the already turbo setups from manufacturers, like let's say the GTIs. They go into the stage 1 tunes with those things already set up, the superchargers and the turbos. But if you have a car that can actually take something different, that is actually something that they can also do, because we have seen some natural aspirated Subarus that have actually gotten a supercharger upgrade from these guys actually. Yeah.
Well, when it comes now to the gearbox, we know for most of these racers, they prefer the stick shift for some, and there are those that come, with the auto gear, with the automatic gearbox systems. What's the balance between the two?
Actually, the thing happens, there was a time when the stick shifts were actually the thing in the market, and they still are, because for guys who've been driving cars like the older Subarus, they were not provided with manual transmissions. They were not provided with automatic transmissions. But coming into what we have at the moment, you're looking at cars like the Volkswagen Golf GTIs. For cars like those ones, it's actually very rare to get a manual spec for them.
Yes.
And then again, there was the way that the gearbox units in these cars have been set up is actually more intelligent, because you're getting a car that has a dual clutches, what is usually called the DCT. So for a car like that one, you have it's like two gearbox units have been combined. So you have one that engages the odd numbered gears, another one engages the even numbered gears. So when you're in gear 1, the other one is already thinking of throwing in gear 2. So if you have a car like that one, I think it's more convenient when it comes to giving you less stress on the track, because the moment you put your foot down, the gearbox knows what to do from the moment you take off.
Very clever for that. And for you to do that, you need the right kind of wheels. There are those who use the fiber-belted radials. There are those who use the steel-belted radials. What kind of wheels do you use for the cars here?
I think for most of the time it goes down to what you're looking to get, and actually also determined by the condition of the track that you're going to be racing on. Because for me, I think if I'm to go to the brands, most of the time people tend to use, I think you have Michelins that come in. But I think
actually, I'm talking about the surface of the wheel that you want, not even about the brand. Yeah. What do you go for? Are you going for one where the grooves go round, or are you looking for something that, or are you looking for what you'd call the slicks, those that look almost smooth?
Yeah, I think I would go for the one the ones that go around, because the idea is to get to the finish line as fast as possible, and actually the way that they distribute traction is actually very important. So I think if you have grooves that are sort of have those rather, let's say, weird shapes, I think it takes a toll on the performance of the vehicle and the way that it is going to drive to the other end.
So which means that the grooves basically have to be a complete circle around the tire.
If you can get those ones, you have an advantage over your opponent already.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that comes in here, and people always ask, is the safety. Because you're driving, this is a car that has been given a lot of boost, you're driving fast. What's the safety regulation for the cars?
I think it all starts with the driver, because if you're coming in as a driver, you need to have a protective gear, you need to have your helmet in place, you need to, the car has to be verified by the guys at the track. They have to make sure that there is a certain level that your car can actually go to, because And they actually have to make sure that you can handle that amount of power as the driver, because you cannot come from a vehicle that, say, does about 100 HP, and you get thrown to a car that does about 1500 HP for the first time. You have to, most of the guys,
that is me.
Actually, most of the guys who come to the events are guys who have been doing this for some time. A guy who bought a car at 100 HP, he has tuned it all the way to, let's say, 500 or 600. They've been driving it for some time, and that is actually very important, because you don't want a guy who will take off and then get thrown out of the track by the car. Yeah, that is something that actually gets looked into. You need to have the basics like your fire extinguisher close, which as much as you have them, there is also the other bit of safety where you have fire engines from either the county governments, which is what happened when we went to Nyahururu last time. There was a standby fire engine on site, and there were also ambulances on site. Yeah, that is something that is actually very important for an event like that one.
You mentioned about the helmet, but I want to ask about roll cage. I know most people would like their cars light eventually, so that for optimal performance. But what safety things do you require from a driver? Do you require them to have a fire suit, or is just the helmet?
I think for most of the time it is the helmet, but if they can have a fire suit, that would be much convenient. But for most of the time, it's always that kind of stuff for the helmet. That is the most important.
Basic roll cages, probably.
No, not really, because you know, for an event like Sunset Corsa, it's actually an event that is open to all kinds of vehicles. When we went to Nairobi last time, there was a guy in a diesel Mazda Demio who was actually on track. There was a guy with a BMW X3, and those are actually family cars. So I think the guy who was racing with the BMW X3 actually brought it out with that child seat. That child seat thing was actually on when he was racing. So most of the time we have guys who are actually coming in with their family cars, and for them, for you to let them in, a guy is coming to race on Sunday, he has to be at work on Monday. Yeah, I think we always admit them in the way they are.
All right. If I was a marshal at that event and I see something with baby on board, I don't think I would allow that person to drive for any reason. But Byron, now let's come to the other side of this competition. And we're talking about bikes, motorcycles, super bikes. How do you incorporate them into the competition before we get into the nitty-gritties of how entries are run and how the competition runs?
No, for the biking side of it, there has always been this kind of hot air between the biking groups in Kenya, and there is a guy who owns a Nissan GTR, which has been tuned to about 1,500 horsepower.
Okay, so that's a generator.
Yeah, that's actually a very powerful car. So for most of the time, there has been this debate on whether that car can, it's always said that is the fastest car in the region. So the argument has always been from the bikers. They always say that they will find a way of actually beating him and becoming the fastest groups in Africa. So it has been happening for some time, and when we went to Nyahururu, there was a BMW bike, I think it was the S1000RR, actually went against him for the first time. And then there was a Kawasaki H2, which according to some of the rumors that we might be getting is that it's going to get tuned. So the thing about biking is that all the power actually goes to one wheel, which is the rear wheel. So you have to be on top of your game to control that. So for most of these guys, they're actually going to be looking at beating that GTR. Yeah.
What happened in Nyahururu? Who won, the bike or the car?
No, I think
the biker or the driver?
I think it was very controversial, because some guys were not ready to accept the results. But for the first round that went against the BMW S1000, that bike actually won the race against the GTR. But when it was done with the Kawasaki H2, the GTR won the race again. So guys came out with rather controversial remarks about the entire thing.
Well, look, it's just a race. What was controversial, about one bike? It's all about the driver. It comes down at times to the driver or the person riding.
Yeah. The thing that happens is that with most of these guys, you're always going to get an excuse. Someone's going to say, he didn't launch correctly, I didn't launch correctly. Someone's going to say, the traction was off for me, the traction was this for me. So as much as it's always thrilling to do that, when a guy loses, there is always going to be a story behind it. Yeah.
All right, now let's come to this. And drag racing, this is serious speed event, and they do it at airports or airstrips. And Byron, let me come to this. How do you work with the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority and the Kenya Airport Authority to get access to these facilities?
I think this is like the third time the event is going to be happening. Over time, we have developed contacts, and we have to appreciate some of our friends who are also our sponsors, our Flight Star Academy. They've always had this upper hand in assisting us in getting access to these facilities. And then we have also received much support from the Civil Aviation Authority, because for you to have such an event, you have to alert them on time, and they actually have to approve it. So the guys have been very supportive, and I actually appreciate them about
and the Kenya Airports Authority, so that you get the land there, yes, the Civil Aviation Body, so that they don't use the airport.
Yeah, and they have come through for us in the two times that the event has been held, and definitely this time as well.
Okay. Yeah. Now, how do you set up the track for this drag racing?
You have the most important thing is that you have to make sure that there are no loose chippings on the track, because they can actually be dangerous. Someone can veer off the track, or they can also the things can actually shatter your windscreen when you're driving. So the first thing that has to be done is that you have to make sure that the surface is actually decent enough, so that when you're driving, there is nothing that is going to cause harm to your windscreen or to your paintwork, because they're actually bad, because you know when you're driving and they're hitting your paintwork, it's actually a painful sound to bear. Yeah, so that is actually the first thing that must be done, and it has to be cleaned, and you have to make sure that you don't have loose chippings on the track before the marking is even done.
Okay, yeah. So you clear all the loose chippings, then next setting up the track and the distance to be used.
Yeah, that is actually done by, we have, the event is held by different guys. We have guys who specialize in that, which is the form of the Motoring Press Agency, like the guys under JM Baraza. They've been doing that for some time locally, and I think they also have international experience. So they always advise us on what to do and when to do, and how to set up the track, even for the time trial races.
Okay, yeah. So let's now get down to this. For you having been one, as we take a look at this drag racing, yeah. When you pick, say, Nyahururu, and you've got to set up this track, about what's the average length that you would have for this, to see who, as the drivers, go head-to-head on this?
I think the average length, I think, for last time was about, it was almost a kilometer. I'm not exactly sure on that, but it was around there, because, for the moment a guy drives all the way down there, when he overdoes it and reaches a certain level, he actually has this risk of maybe blowing up the engine. So you have to put that into consideration, that when you're pushing your car at such higher revs, there is a certain distance you can get to, which is actually healthy for the car, so that once you get there, your car can now start cooling down, and maybe you also need room to actually stop on the other end, so yes. That you can actually come back to the line again. Yeah.
So when you're having that, what's been the experiences from the very first event that you held, and you get onto the track, and different people come and compete?
I think the experience has been wonderful so far, because for Sunset Corsa, it actually began last year around September. So you actually wake up and you tell guys, now you're having a racing event for the first time. You have those seasoned drivers who look at it and think, no, these guys, you always get those kinds of guys. But after time, I think going into the second one and the third one, the reception has been actually very positive from the drivers, and we have actually received a positive response from the spectators as well, because I think for the number that came to Nyahururu, that number was actually very crazy. It was a big number. So I think we are actually looking at way bigger things for Sunset Corsa as we go forward. Sunset
Corsa, it's something someone's got to think, because when you hear about Corsa and Sunset, what's the connection between those two?
I think for Corsa is one of the driving modes in a Lamborghini. There is this Lamborghini Urus thing, which was one of the fastest SUVs in the world. There was actually one driving mode, which was Corsa. I cannot confirm which mode it was for, but I think it was based on track performance, if I'm not wrong. So actually, that is where Corsa is the biggest bit of it. And if you say Corsa, and you have guys who know things about Lamborghini, the first thing I want to think about has to be the performance on a track. Yeah.
So here it is. Take us back to September last year. Trying to get the registrations, what the outcome was, and what were the lessons learned, especially when it comes to planning of this event?
I think what happened last time is that we got to learn a lot as far as driver registration goes, because the event was, we announced the event when it was about 3 months to the time. And it was actually
in June.
Yes, it was actually happening for the first time. So like I said earlier, on the reception from you had the other season drivers who were thinking like these guys are doing this for the first time and that kind of stuff. But I think we are on the right track from now going on. There is nothing to be scared about for the spectators, for the drivers. Yeah, everybody who will be there, we are expecting everyone to have a great time.
What were the entries then, last year?
I think we had about 12 and about 12, 13 racing cars. Which the event was actually supposed to happen for 2 days, but like I'd said, because for the first time, yeah, it actually went down for a single day. Yeah, it was actually packed with fun. Yeah, but we actually took some lessons from there. We learned and we decided that going forward, we're going to give a new approach to getting drivers, and we're going to give a new approach to announcing the happenings before we actually get there. And we did that for the second time when it went down, and it was actually decent.
Well, Nyahururu, this is at altitude, and some of the pictures we're seeing are from that Nyahururu event. How different was the Masinga and the Nyahururu track, just by the moment you get to it and you do a recce of it?
No, I think altitude is always going to be a factor for these high performance cars, because when you drive them, the quality of air you get there is not the same as what you get in an area on a lower altitude. So there was we were sort of we had some sort of scares deep down, but the drivers came, and I think the cars might have been surprised by themselves, because they were actually able to perform like that in that area. But it's always a big factor, because I think for the guys coming to Masinga, they don't have to worry about what was in their minds when they actually went to Nyahururu. Yeah, because the way the cars take the air in, the quality of air in high altitude areas like Nyahururu is always going to be different compared to what you're going to get in Masinga.
The oxygen levels are lower, which means the combustion is less.
Yeah, so I think going to Masinga, that is something that they don't have to worry about anymore.
Okay. Yeah. The tracks, the difference, the surface on which they were driving?
I think because it was happening in Nyahururu for the first time, there were guys who were speaking about the issue about traction, like for the racing between the GTR and the bikers. But for Masinga, it's actually different, because that is a track that has always done this kind of thing for a very long time. If you speak to some of the seasoned drivers, they've actually gone to Masinga and they've done their things in Masinga. So that is actually something that is going to be a big plus as well as we go to Masinga. The kind of a track you're going to get is different compared to what we had in Nyahururu as well. Of course, Nyahururu was able to handle it, but being the first time, there were some observations that were made. But as we go to Masinga, it's going to be much better.
Well, and if you were to describe the Masinga track, how would you, because it's actually within the Kengen lands, and that's their airstrip.
Yeah.
How would you describe it? With the open sides, if there is any wind breaking up items around it.
No, I think for me, I think it's the best in the country. I think for the races that I've attended, because it's a wide track. It's actually long enough to accommodate those kinds of cars as they go, as they carry along that kind of performance to the end. There is also enough room for them to actually cool down and do that kind of stuff. So crowd control as well for Masinga is actually going to be more decent than what we have always had, because for most of the time guys tend to crowd the upper sections of the runway as opposed to going to the lower end. Yeah, so I think even for crowd control, it's going to be much easier as compared to maybe other tracks.
Why would somebody want to be at the start point, not at the finish point?
What happens is that every guy has, everyone has a phone these days. You want to post things on social media. You want guys to see how maybe a GTR came off the track against an Audi RS7. Everybody wants to see that. So you're always going to have, you have about 100 guys trying to get that. There is a guy on the extreme end trying to get that as well. So that is actually what happens. So guys, everyone tries to get what happens when the race actually begins, so that they can go out and launch those arguments against stuff like, Quattro, the launch was superior than what we had in this other car. Yeah, there is always going to be that aspect as well.
So let's now talk about how someone gets to register and, and basically train for to drive these supercars.
No, for the registration, if you want to register as a driver or maybe buy your ticket as a spectator, you have to go to sunsetgt.org. You have to log in. And after that, maybe you can go and you can scroll down and purchase your tickets. Of course, we have group tickets and individual tickets. And drivers actually have to follow the same procedure. They have to log in to sunsetgt.org and actually get to register their cars. For the training, what happens is that most of the guys, I think at least 80% of the guys who come to these events are guys who have been driving these cars. And then maybe you have one guy who wants to come in and try something new. Sunset Corsa is actually open because when we went to Nairobi, there was a guy who was racing in a Nissan Skyline crossover. Actually, there was a guy in a Mazda Demio with a diesel engine. You're always going to have those kinds of guys. So the thing you have to make sure is that if you have a wide track, and these are guys who have been driving for some time, they can actually control their vehicles. It's actually an open avenue for someone because at the end of the day, everyone has to start from somewhere again. Yeah.
And this is straight line driving.
Yeah, this is straight line driving.
So then we know how sports is classified. For example, in the Safari, we know there is Rally 1, Rally 2, Rally 3. So then how do you try get that, what you would say, almost an even, a level playing field, such that if someone comes with their Corolla or basically, the standard road car with, say, about 100, 110 horsepower, don't compete against somebody who's got a car with 220.
So the first thing that happens is that these guys have to go for time trials. So the one where they lay cones and then you have to go to make your way around the cones, go all the way around, and your time is actually recorded. So I think that is actually the first step that happens. So from that one, it is then the judges then decide which cars will actually make it to the drag race event, because you don't want to put a Toyota Starlet in the same track again as a Nissan GTR. I think it once happened sometime. I was speaking to some guys. It actually happened a while back in some other event, and guys actually say that was one of the worst races they've ever seen. So time trials, that is the first stage. If you can get it past that, then you're actually on a decent path to face the other guys with a much powerful cars.
So you've got this single elimination drag and you've got the Gymkhana race. Tell us about those things.
No, for the Gymkhana, it's actually for the time trial thing where you lay the cones and the guys go around for that. Then you have the drag race. The drag race is where you come after the Gymkhana and you meet the other guys. Someone tells you, I saw you in that. Now this is the path. Now you can actually, there is always the guys making excuses. Someone's going to say, now my car was small or too big for that kind of thing. But now for the drag race, it's going to be like this. So for the drag race, it's always very simple. The first car to get to the stretch line, to get to the finishing line, is the winner. And the last one, and it's 2 cars at a time. Yeah, it's 2 cars at a time.
So eventually, what's the heat system? There are those who say we're going to have the heats. So you've got run 1, run 2, run 3. How do you manage this? Or is it straight elimination?
No, guys actually get a lot of chances. I think for most of the time it's always up to stage 3 or 4. You get your chances, and then there is a stage where now they say, now your results are not worth going into the final stage of it. Yeah.
Timing and ensuring that this actually happens. We know that, for example, if it's rallying, there's the timing equipment and how it works. How does this work?
For the drag race, yeah. For the drag race, I think it's always straightforward. You have to get to the line first.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what about when they take a look at your timings? If you are to go through 3 heats of that, as you try make your way up
for the time trials, that is actually done.
Yes, when you're actually doing the drag, when you say you have the first run and you say, let me take a second one, how do they then compare the two?
I think for most of the time they tend to look at how the race came to the finish line over actually the timing. That is actually what they do, because if you've had 4 chances to race and you've actually come as the last one in all those races, now that begins raising eyebrows. Now let's say, let us try a new guy. Let a new guy try and come into this one. But there are always a lot of aspects that govern actually how the thing happens, because again, for traction, the way it happens, you know, if you put a guy who has a rear-wheel driven vehicle in the same category at first against a guy with a
front-wheel
driven car, yeah,
or all-wheel drive,
there is someone who is always going to have an advantage. So you always try to put guys who are equally matched in terms of the drivetrains into the earlier categories of it, and then when it comes to the end, and a guy who was driving a rear-wheel driven car gets to meet a guy with an all-wheel driven car. Yeah, that is how it ends. Yeah.
So who's got the advantage here, front wheel or rear wheel?
I think for most of the time it's actually the guys with the front wheel, because rear wheel driven cars can actually get the job done, because if you have a car like a BMW M5, that is actually a very proper car. But now what matters is that if you are able to launch it off the line correctly, it's going to be a big deal for you. If you are unable to do that, yeah, you're always going to be on the fighting end of it.
Well, I've always had the stories from rally drivers. They say if you can control the rear-wheel drive car, then the front-wheel drive car should be an easy game for you. And, you know, when taking a look at this, there's something people always ask about, spectator safety. How do you try to keep these people? Because there is something about petrol heads of any form, whether they're the drivers or this, they always want to be next to the car. How do you manage that?
I think for what we've done over the two events, we actually have marshals at the event. It is the role of the marshals to make sure that guys don't come to a certain range closer to the track. You always have to make sure that they are at a safe distance, because anything can always happen with these kinds of cars when someone is driving at that speed. So actually, the marshals play a big role in that. And then there always are markings where you try to make sure that guys don't cross. And when that happens, I think it happened a lot in Nyahururu over last time when the GTR was racing against the bikers. But what we did was that before that race actually started, we had to stall the entire thing, and I make sure that guys were back to their places actually, because anything can always happen again. So that is actually one of the things that is actually a high priority for us.
Well, the other one is the refueling of these cars. We know that if you've got a car that's 1,500 horsepower with the kind, it's basically on steroids, then also the fuel consumption is huge. How do you manage this, refuel zones and fuel safety?
No, I think for the last time we went out, we actually provided fuel for the drivers. There was avgas. They actually made use of avgas. You don't have to use a lot of it. You actually take some of it, and you mix it with the normal fuel, and then the guys have to go against that. But when it comes to the refueling, again, the guys actually have setups in different locations where after you are out of the track and you want to refuel, there is always a safe area you can go to and actually get that done for you. So
basically tell me, the common word to me would be something like adulteration. If I go pick my super petrol and you give me aviation gas, so how does this work?
Actually, if you're coming to such an event, you need a better quality of fuel, which is in most situations, guys tend to use V-Power, because it's actually the recommended standard for racing, and actually avgas actually does some magic to it again. So that is actually the most important thing. I don't think it would be wiser to use avgas using the normal fuel that you're going to be getting from anywhere again. Yeah, it's not wise to do that. All right.
So what's the risk of trying to mix these premium fuels and avgas?
Okay, you're always going to have a chance of maybe blowing up your engine. Anything can happen. You can drive your car, but after some time you're going to have serious engine issues as a result of the kind of fuel that you're running. Yeah, that is a high risk.
And when you have this kinds of events, they draw people from all walks of life. You'd have to speak about that. What has been the response of the communities in Masinga and Nyahururu?
We've actually gotten a lot of positive feedback from these guys. I think it's actually the guys in Nyahururu cannot even believe it that we are actually going to Masinga this time. I think most of the guys, if we were to ask them, would want us to go back, but I think it's something that is going, because it has to go around. It's something that we have to do. But then again, if you go back to those guys, I think the rate of positivity that you get from them is actually always very high, because it means a lot for them. especially in terms of business as well. You have hotels in those areas. You have guys who are selling drinks. You have those kind of people. So they're always going to look at opportunities like those ones to maybe boost their events. And it actually raises the profile of a certain area. Because I think before we went to Nyahururu, I think there were actually very few guys who even knew that an airstrip actually existed there. Most of the guys didn't know about that before we went there. So it actually raises the profile of the area you're going to again. Yeah.
The other one is just taking a look at, from your statistics and attendance, over 30 race cars eventually. And there's something that's, will be competing with your event, and there's a case of shared cars. Do you have this at your events?
No, there is none that I've heard of so far. But I think because there is another event that is going on in the same county, I think we can only...
Anyway, over 100 kilometers away. So you don't have to worry.
I don't think there is much to worry about, because I think a Sunset Corsa has been laid down and it's happening. We have guys who have already registered. We believe they will be coming, and actually wish the other guys all the best as well.
What are the kind of numbers what's the registration numbers at the moment?
No, I think we're actually looking at good numbers, because maybe if I was to go to the previous events, we're looking at like 2,000. I think this time we can actually do much better than that.
Actually, those are the fans.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Participants. Okay, let me use the term competitors.
No, for the competitors, you always have guys registering up to the very last minute. There is a guy who will come in on Friday at 2 p.m. and say, "Now I want to race." So you're always looking at that, but we're looking at least 30, 40. Yeah. What's always manageable? Because there are standards to it. We had a Formula 1 event last night. They always say a track is about 22 full grid is 22 cars. For the WRC Safari, they say at the moment they're looking at max 50 cars. Yeah, I think for us we're looking at about if we can get at least maybe 20, which we will get, maybe 20, 30. That is actually a very decent number for actually a 2-day event. Yeah. And eventually, what's the outcome? How do you manage the prizes for this? I think for the prizes, they always go into different categories. You have guys winning in the time trials. You have guys who win in the drag race events, and you have guys who come out as the overall winners. A guy went to the time trials, won. He's come to the drag race again. He has won. So they're actually categorized into all those different categories. Yeah. So tell us how then you put together the categories. I'm trying to think that if someone comes with a car with 220 horsepower, how do you then put, classify these people basically on, say, by limits of horsepower? I think the same way you have in boxing, you have a middleweight, a light, heavyweight, a heavyweight. Yeah, I think the whole thing is set up is that we always start with the drivetrain and the running. If a guy has a rear-wheel driven car, yeah, front-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive, you always try to put them into those categories at first. Yeah, so then the guys that will make it to the end and come out on top of their categories, now they can be able to meet up against the other guys. Oh, so basically it's rear wheel against rear wheel, yeah, front wheel against front wheel, bike against bike. Yeah, and then now when you get to the final stages, now guys with different trains can meet. Yeah. Eventually, how then do you get to spread this sport around the country and speaking to people so that they understand that if, for example, they decide to go to, let's see, there's an airstrip somewhere in there's an airstrip in Eldoret just beside, not only the airport, there's also an airstrip in Eldoret if you are to now use the smaller facility there. I think the first thing that you always do is that you have to communicate to the Civil Aviation Authority in time, so that even inspections can be done. You can pick an airstrip somewhere, but then when you get to it, you get told that the condition of that airstrip does not reach the standards that you need for that kind of an event. So that is always the first thing that you do. But for most of the time, these things tend to go to the airstrips that are already set up and have a certain reputation, because with Sunset Corsa we're trying to do it differently. We're trying to get to as much places as possible. We want to raise awareness. We want this thing to become like a a national sort of thing, something that a guy can say, now we have an airstrip in Kisii, and maybe you can be able to consider that. We don't want to be biased with certain locations. Yeah, so that is something that we're actually looking into.
Well, and obviously for you, it's easier. Masinga, you know about it, and also the other one is Nyahururu. Now, the other one is something that people may want to, ask. We've seen some incidents happen, and this is all about road safety and motorsport. And even for the FIA, the global body, they're saying, look, you may be getting more powerful cars, but how do you promote safety such that even if your car has a boost, you don't have to go, proving it to everyone on any road?
Yeah, I think for what we do differently is that for most of the time we tend, it's actually something that we write about in our social media platforms. It's something that we speak about. It's something that we do videos about. We tend to raise awareness about it. We always advise drivers going into such events that the track is where you're supposed to be racing. You're not supposed to be trying to beat a certain guy, an innocent guy driving to a certain location when you're driving on a normal road. So we always speak about it on our social media platforms. We do videos about it. We encourage guys to drive safely, and we do that kind of thing. And for most of the time, they tend to listen to what we have to say. Yeah.
Eventually, now, when it comes about drag racing, this is basically sprint racing, where you've got a track. It's about 1 kilometer long, and you do the timing. The other one that we would like to ask is interest from other countries, Tanzania, Uganda, or how do you relate with these other racing communities in East Africa?
I think one of the biggest communities that actually exist when it comes to cars is the racing community, because I think when you went to Nyahururu, there were guys from Tanzania. I think there was a guy who had a BMW M135. It was actually from Tanzania, and it's something that we are actually looking to. We are expecting to have more drivers from different countries, so that we can be able to meet with them and maybe get to know a thing or two about what they do differently. I think it's actually very important for such an event as well. Yeah.
Now, as this grows, we've seen, I'll use the example of time trial, or basically tarmac racing, as it was. Eventually, they affiliated themselves with the Kenya Motorsport Federation, such that they can now organize events and they can have a calendar, the same way, how would I say, the raids or autocross and communities have their events. What's the process of getting recognized such that this is now a full competitive sport?
It's actually something that we've been looking into for some time, because I think for you to get that kind of recognition, you need to work with the relevant authorities. First of all, you need to be able to work with authorities like the civil aviation. Again, you need to be able to be in good terms with the local authorities. Maybe if you go to counties, you can create a rapport with them. That is something that is very important, because that is where you start from, so that the next time you tell a guy in Kisii County, now we're coming to race in Kisii, or it was in Gishu County, they may be able to have a look and say, now, these guys actually did well in Nyahururu and they did well in Machakos. I think it's something that we can actually give them a chance to do. And I think for Sunset Corsa, most guys are already looking at that, because from what has gone down, especially in Nyahururu, I think most counties would be very happy to open doors for us.
What about working with the Kenya Motorsport Federation? What's the plan for that?
I think that is something that is also in the works. Our partners from Daimler Motorsports Kenya, I think they've been doing that for some time. So we are actually looking to much bigger things as we progress.
Then everyone asks, if you're going to enter, what's required of you minus the car in terms of cost, entry fees, things like that?
No, I think for 90% of the thing is actually the entry fee. If you can be able to register your car and you've been allowed to enter, fine. But if you're a spectator and you can get your ticket, it's actually open to everyone.
All right. So basically, all I need to do is my car is my entry fee.
Yeah. If you have a car and you're looking to race, that is actually fine. But for a spectator, all you need is actually your ticket. It's actually a very open event.
So here it is, as with every event. Now, Byron, what I would like you to do is, take us through some of the names of, the Sunset Corsa top racers, the drivers and, the kind of equipment they may have. You could take us through some of the names. There's always you'll see the same way we would say that yellow car belongs to Karan Patel or that red car belongs to Ian Duncan, how then would you take us through some of the confirmed field or people who you are always with?
I think one of the guys who will be coming special to Masinga is that a guy called Kim. Guys on social media know him as GTR Tanuki. It's actually named after his car, the Nissan GTR, the one with the 1500 horsepower. That is one of the cars we'll be looking at. We'll also be looking at F.U. Ashira, who's been racing with one of a Subaru. I think it's from the 80s or the 90s. It's actually a car that has been around for some time. There's a guy called Jafo. He has a red Subaru STI, bad guy for that matter. Yeah, so those are some of the guys we're going to be looking at.
And no, you haven't mentioned a blue Subaru yet.
Actually, F.U. Ashira drives one. Yeah. So we're looking at, again, Kim with the GTR. We're looking at Jafo with the Subaru. Actually, there are two Subarus. But for most of the time, I think the last two times, the GTIs and the Golfs have actually come on top.
What about for you?
I think I'm more of a spectator.
I'm organized and behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm more of that guy. I'm only looking to the fun that is going to come out of the event. Yeah.
And everyone asks, all around this event, there are sideshows that tend to come up all the time. People may want to have, the entertainment around it. What are you trying to do and make sure that, you don't leave the Kenyan grounds as a mess? At times you go for an event and it's extremely littered.
I think what you have to do, for you to have an event like this one, I think guys are always going to be looking at the entertainment bit of it first. There are guys who are actually coming to party over the racing, but we always try to have guys who can actually do the cleanups after the event, because there's always going to be littering, especially when guys go for food from vendors and that kind of thing. So cleaning is always organized after the event. That is something that will actually be done, so that the next time we go and tell them we want to host an event, they'll actually open doors for us again.
All right. Thank you very much, Byron Omondi. And speaking about the Sunset Corsa drag racing, this is where you do a kilometer, 2 cars, most of them on steroids, and also the bikes. Thank you very much. See Masinga on the 9th and the 10th of July. And as we come to a close of this program, let us move over to the Kenyatta International Convention Center.